is important because it provides a lot of context. So and it depends how far back on the history you want to go. But so like the Anacostia River has that reputation, right, of being America's most polluted river, coming out of that now. But for me, it was fascinating to learn more about how and why that happened, everything from the tobacco farmers that were here that led to long-term erosion issues, and tobacco depletes the nutrients from the soil. So like farmers would like cut down trees, plant, get like 3 years out of it, move somewhere else, cut down trees, plant, and that kind of led to some of the geographical changes. But then in more recent history, having being the dumping ground before environmental regulations were really a thing. So like Kenilworth Park was just like a big pile of trash that just like got burnt, and the community fought against it forever, and it took the death of like a community boy playing in it before it shut down. And just stories like that all up and down the river. And then I was the naive college student learning about all this who was like, oh, these are issues of the past. Like, of course, we're beyond this. And then I was put in touch with a community leader, Rhonda from Buzzard Point. She's the ANC, so Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner, representing 2,000 residents. For folks who don't know what that is, they're responsible for 2,000 residents and more or less report to the council member of that area. So I was doing a lot of video work, and we had a mutual contact who believed that I could help her tell her story. And honestly, I was just so inundated with like projects and work and side hustles. I was like, I'm just gonna meet to be nice. Like, I can't take more on my plate. And we sat down for coffee, and I heard her story, and it was just one of those life-changing moments where you just couldn't walk away. And she's also a natural storyteller. So when she tells a story, you just kind of get sucked in. I mean that in a good way. Yeah, so she talked about how, do you know where Buzzard Point is?
No.
Okay, do you know where National Stadium is?
Yeah.
And where the new DC United Stadium is?
Yes, okay. Is that over by that bird conservation building, right?
Earth Conservation Corps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, we do like with the podcast, I do a trash pickup there like every other month, like helping them pick up trash from the Anacostia River.
One of my first video mentors is actually Daryl Wallace, who came out of Earth Conservation Corps. So he was one of the first ones to help me out on that path. Mm-hmm. They will always have a special place in my heart. They're wonderful. But yeah, so that's where Buzzard Point is, and that's where Rhonda and her community reside. And actually, Earth Conservation Corps is another great group to talk to understand the historical pollution that's taken place there. But what's happening now is, or has been happening over the past few years, is a ton of air pollution right next to a vulnerable community that doesn't have the resources to deal with the health implications. And already it's like a cancer cluster, an asthma cluster. So and a lot of these folks are in public housing. So like the city has like moved everyone here, and then it's like you're right next to this industrial zone where regulations keep being violated, but because it's cheaper for the companies, this is a simplistic overview, but it's cheaper for them to pay the fines than it is to do better, basically. Yeah. So you can hate the companies, but they're doing what businesses do. I think that the policies and enforcement need to be stronger, personally.
Yeah, I could say that on like literally everything, right?
Right, yeah. But it's, I started a few years ago just filming Rhonda and her residents in the community meetings and the pollution, and just became so wrapped up in that story and working on a documentary about it.
I was going to ask. I was literally about to ask. So, like, are you planning on? That's awesome.
Gosh, this has been a long time coming. Yeah, it was very much by the bootstraps. we put together a preliminary documentary to present at the Chesapeake Watershed Forum in West Virginia that happens every year. I hope I said their name right. It's been a minute. And we presented it there 2 years in a row, and it was as an educational tool, and it had really profound reactions. And I need to finish it. And COVID has kind of put a loop in all that. So that has been like the project that hasn't ended, that needs to come to a close. I think a lot of creatives can relate to.
Oh yeah, I mean, procrastination is like, yeah.
Yeah, the curse of perfectionism with procrastination, with life just coming in and out.
Yeah, COVID's been a different time.
For sure. Yeah, and it's been a challenging story too, because it's been stop and go over the years, and some of the people that honestly I wanted to build out their stories more have passed to illnesses that you can or cannot attribute to the pollution that's been going on. Mm-hmm. And our goal is really just to highlight why this happened, how it happened, and how DC can do better. But also, this is not unique to DC. This is happening in frontline communities all across the country.
Yeah.
Where, because they're disenfranchised or don't have the resources, they're getting the brunt of all this pollution. It's mm-hmm. very much along the line, it's environmental racism at its worst.
Yeah, I feel like in the past couple of years, I've definitely realized how important it is to be involved in your community, and how important it is to like go to like these different community meetings, and like, I guess just really be involved in what's happening. And I feel like it's all about education, but it's really hard to get the resources, I think, for a lot of people, or like to understand where you have to go in order for things to get done. With the government and everything.
Yeah. Gosh, and even in these community meetings, right, that were happening just after work hours, a lot of these residents had like families and kids, or were not physically well enough to get to the center or wherever the community was taking place, and food wasn't provided, and the meeting was like from 5 to 8 or 6 to 8, and you're expecting like parents to be there on these critical issues with their children, like who are hungry, and not provide food. Like Rhonda always provided food, but that always came out of her own pocket, and I was just like, really?
Yeah.
Really? These stakeholders aren't going to help? Like,
mm-hmm.
You want to call yourself a stakeholder? I will say DC United has done more than I think any of the other stakeholders have, to their credit.
Right.
But it's crazy to me.
Yeah. Have you always been like, I guess I want to say like a visual artist?
Yeah, I guess I'm a visual and kinesthetic learner. So for me, yeah, I guess.
How did you get involved in like freelancing with photography and film?
Well, so with video, it started for this whole story really starts with my senior capstone project at George Washington University. I had a great advisor who supported this, and I was working on a paper, and she gave me like an old like sport camera kind of deal to capture interviews to get quotes and such. And then I was in a sorority, and I lived in the house, and I started showing all the girls these video interviews that I got and seeing their reactions. And I was like, okay, no one's going to read this paper, it shouldn't come from me, these narratives. It should come from the person who is experiencing it. So that's when I realized the power of visual storytelling, so video. And that passion took off from there. And I basically was self-taught, but I had mentors like Daryl Wallace in the beginning who like really supported that passion. So yeah, that started. And then more recently had to learn photography for work. That was like the missing link in a multimedia production. So I had to learn photography.
Yeah.